Welcome, viewers and listeners. Today is the 27th of November. I welcome you to the leadership lecture series, episode number 3. Previous week episodes, I talked about myself. I'm a Sabu Sudangi chemical engineer. I have worked in several places. And based on the experience I gained in those places, I decided to study and talk about leadership as I saw it, and especially observe the mistakes that I observed in the places that I worked, and try to see if we can find solutions to those mistakes. Today, I want to talk about the Federal Superphosphate Fertilizer Company, where I actually worked the longest in my life. And at the early part of my working life, I worked there from I started in October 1974 to March 1984. As I said earlier, I started work with ABU, but I applied first to Federal Superphosphate Fertilizer in, I think, late June 1974. But I was told that they had taken all the engineers they needed, and so that's why I went to ABU and started work there. Sometime in October, I was hurriedly summoned by fertilizer company to come and attend an interview with them, because now they had a spot for engineers. The reason I found out later why they hurriedly employed me was because those engineers they sent for training, they wrote a letter complaining that the training they were being given was too low for engineers, because they lumped together the operators and the engineers and gave them the same course. And I think they were right, because the jobs they perform will be very different. For example, the job of a graduate engineer from university is different from an HND or OND engineer. The job of a graduate engineer is that of design. He designs plants, whereas HND and OND, they operate the plants and they maintain them. So you cannot give the same course to the different cadres of engineers. An engineer from a university is supposed to design plants, and what they should have done in the training for engineers was to attach them to the plant contractor who was designing the plant, so that right from inception the engineer will see how it's done, and when problems arise later he will know how to design solutions. So actually there should have been 4 different types of training, different for graduate engineers from university, different from engineers from HND, OND, and then different from secondary school leavers and CNG technicians. So, and I think this is the very first mistake made that will later on lead to the collapse of the Federal Fertilizers Company, because you train people for the job they will do. If you don't train them, then they cannot do the job. And the second mistake they made was in the employment of subsequent management. You see, after the plant was constructed, I think they finished the construction around early 76. So for 2 years, they signed an agreement for the top management, Japanese, to run the plant, to run the company, and at the same time train subsequent managers. So after the 2 years expired, I think in 1978, early 78, they decided to go and employ production manager and maintenance manager. That was the second mistake. The mistake they made was that somebody from Nigeria went to India and arranged with the High Commission of Nigeria and India and employed two people who turned out to be totally unqualified for the job, especially the production manager. He never worked in any fertilizer company, never worked in any chemical plant. When I asked him where he worked before, because I realized he didn't know anything, he told me he worked in a glue factory, for example. How can you employ someone with that experience to run a sulfuric acid plant, for example, or a fertilizer plant? And the maintenance manager was a little better because he had worked in a small acid plant, sulfuric acid plant, producing 10 tons per day. Our sulfuric acid plant was producing 125 tons per day. So what they should have done, instead of someone to go to India and employ people that he liked, they should have employed or engaged the services sorry they should have engaged the services of consultant an employment agency, so that the two of them will now put up a tender, international advert, look for the best. And that way they will select. They didn't have to go to India. They can invite anybody they wanted to Nigeria. After all, it's just a question of giving them flight ticket. And that's small feat, because at that time, flight ticket was in thousands of naira, not even, or hundreds of naira, not even thousands. But they didn't do that. Instead, the reason why that happened was because, in any case, the top managers in the FSFC, although there were 2 engineers, but they never worked in any chemical industry. So they had no experience, and therefore could not really solve such problems. Now, so then I also realized that very early, maybe second or third year, that the plant capacity was too low for the demand of fertilizer in Nigeria. The plant capacity was 100,000 tons of one type of fertilizer only. So I suggested to management that we should find a program that would train engineers in plant design so that they can expand this plant. But the guys told me that, well, we don't think government will be interested in expanding. I said, why would they not be interested? They set it up, and they are buying fertilizer from all over the world. We should be making it from here, not importing it. But they didn't agree with me. So I tried even going to the Ministry of Industry at that time to get support, but they didn't understand. Now, so I said, well, if I cannot be a real engineer with designing plants, they want me to be a manager, so let me go and do MBA so that I can be a better manager. And that's why I went to the US in 1983 for my MBA. So all these lead to the issues of how do you get better leadership. I talked last week about grassroots politics. It's one way, especially if you have political action committees all over the country that can filter out bad leaders, so that we are left with only good leaders to choose from. Another third way of getting good leaders is to insist or to enforce the asset declaration law. Unfortunately, it's not being enforced. Now, I have thought a lot about this, and the best way, I think, is if we can get a leader that believes in it, and then he will do it as a leadership by example. Let him declare his assets and those of his wife and grown children who are not government officials, and is create an office that will monitor the compliance, maybe on a random basis. And he should start with those agencies that are supposed to help in this compliance, like EFCC, like ICPC, like the Supreme Court, like the police, all those agencies that are involved. They should be the ones to set the pace, do it by example. When the top does it, the others will follow. I heard that when the current director of customs assumed duty, he declared his assets, and he insisted all those below him should also declare their assets. I heard that because of that, some of the top shots in the customs decided to resign. But that's the sort of thing we need. We need to enforce this law. And if we do that, in fact, it will eliminate all those politicians, those money bags that come into office in order to steal government money. Because they know if they steal money and they declare their assets, the assets will be seized and they will be sent to jail. So it will remove the incentive to come into politics. So I think that those three ways that will help in helping us get better leadership. Thank you. And I have a request for viewers and listeners. Please share this video. Why I want you to share it is because the more people get to hear about it, the more we'll succeed in installing good leadership. Because I know that most people are not happy with the kind of leadership we have. And I think if we have people who get interested in this, especially the formation of this political action committee. I was told about one group in Kankia in Katsina State that found it interesting, and they asked the details of how to set up this political action committee. So if the little I know about it, I will share with them. And the more we have such interest, the more hope we have of getting better leadership.